Thanks again for joining us at the 2021 Sloan Sports Analytics Conference Competitive Advantage Shocks, presented by Kager, also known as the Craft Analytics Group. My name is Kurt Bullard, and I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan. It's my pleasure today to introduce our next presentation, Transforming Education with Data. Please join me in welcoming our next speaker, Dr. Felicia Stoops, Assistant Professor at Johnson C. Smith University.
Thank you, Kurt. So today I'm going to share my thoughts, my personal experiences, and many of the lessons that I've learned on how data can transform higher education. So you may notice from my title that specifically when I say data, I'm referring to data, analytics, technology, and athletics. For me, this is a paradigm that I've developed to bring data science education to my campus, my university, and that university, as mentioned before, it's a small private HBCU, which is an acronym for Historically Black College and University. So first, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the strong demand right now, especially on academic institutions. There's a very strong demand for graduates with data science and analytics skills. So that drives the demand for the graduates, also drives the demand for academic institutions where we and related training programs need to prepare these graduates. And specifically in the field of sports analytics, we know that the market is, in particular, is going to continue to grow. That growth is going to be very rapid and over the next several years and increase, of course, the demand challenge. So this particular need, this supply demand challenge has opened the door of opportunity for a wide variety of instructional programs. So faculty such as myself can adapt and adopt new methods, also find different approaches that are multidisciplinary, and basically new ways to teach data science to our students. So we know already that we needed an increase in graduates, not only just in data science specifically, but in all STEM fields. And so specifically in order to do that, one thing that I want to point out is that in STEM fields, there's an underrepresentation, particularly for students of color. And so HBCUs like the one where I teach is very critical in helping to meet this challenge because we have been these engines for the economic growth and advancement for these communities of color for decades. So I wanted to just first go into a little bit about what it means for us to create a program around data science. And so I'd like to just kind of talk about it from the perspective of a data science practitioner. So one of the things that I've done at my university is we have been working on a data science minor program. And so this minor program is for undergraduate students to help develop these competencies, the knowledge, skills, and different data acumen that is needed for engaging undergraduate students. I've also thought about this in terms of how to bring research to undergraduates as well. So what we've done is I've tried to consider the fact that these students are undergraduates and just starting out learning some of these competencies, and many of them may not already have a STEM background. So one thing that I've done is basically looked at the select skills within the data science practitioner realm. And these particular skills I've honed in on include just kind of allowing the students to understand the business opportunity, understand data wrangling, knowing how to clean the data, working with raw data. And then for me, very importantly, understanding how to explore and visualize that data to help drive decisions. So this is kind of the blueprint that we've been working with to increase the understanding of our students and look for just different ways, not just through traditional curriculum, but also through, extracurricular and non-traditional activities, engagement activities, such as research. So I wanted to just highlight some of the application areas, of course, sports, but also healthcare, education, social enterprise. These are some of the focus areas that we've concentrated on. So specifically for me, I want to talk a little bit about my lab. So for myself, I had initial funding from the National Science Foundation. And with that funding, I founded the social computing lab. And in this lab is where my research is situated at the intersection of communities and technology. What we do is we use computer models and data science to help derive social and economic value for our stakeholders. So one of the particular projects that I'm highlighting and the most current, it focuses on interdisciplinarity, where I pair computer science with what I consider X, right? So the idea is that students can learn different computing concepts and analytics concepts, but then pair it across different contexts and allows them to solve, very challenging problems or different problems. So for example, one of the ones that I've mentioned before is CS plus sports. And for us, we've also been able to integrate CS plus health, in addition to having an emphasis not only on getting data from individuals within the sports context, but also getting data from sports systems and sports technology systems. So for us, having a social computing lab and thinking through, like, what does that mean to offer data science programming outside of traditional computer science classes has led us to kind of develop this paradigm for using data to transform higher education. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this project. So I know that at our university, we had a vibrant athletics program. And one of the things I wanted to do is make sure that our students had what I consider a living lab, where they were able to interact with real world data, and something that was really culturally relevant for them and relevant for our campus community. And so my students are known as the Data Bulls. And so this nickname is a combination of the acronym for Data Analytics, Technology, and Athletics, and then also the nickname for our athletics teams, which are the Golden Bulls. So what we do is we use sports and human performance data and develop projects to explore different questions where the students can align their interests with the questions that they're exploring, through the use of data. All the while, these students are learning these analytics tools and they're learning new methods. So what we were able to do with this over time is we were able to increase our engagement with students through additional funding from the Department of Defense. And with that funding, we were able to engage nine additional faculty other than myself, and also over 80 students. And again, these students are of a predominantly African-American and Hispanic population. And what we were doing is we were engaging them in data science education through the use of sports technology equipment. So from this project and from just developing these concepts, I wanted to share 4 takeaways, right? So that's where the Data Bulls key takeaways comes in. So there are 4 takeaways that I've summarized from the development of this sports analytics research program. So the first takeaway is around supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion. So for me, what this means is it intentionally means designing, like a design approach to your programs. So making sure that you design inclusive programming that will support diversity, equity, inclusion, often known as DEI. It's a commitment that you make at the front end. So for me, it means becoming more informed about different issues, making sure that I acknowledge the role of advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, my role in doing that. And that really is the first step. What could I do? And one of the things is learning about bias that exists, things like privilege and the history, socialization and experiences in fields like data science and other STEM disciplines, where a lot of women are traditionally underrepresented. And of course, we talked about people of color are underrepresented as well in these fields. So the first thing when building teams to work on projects is to begin asking, what is the demographic makeup of this group, right? And then also just thinking and exploring ways to increase the diversity and increase the diversity of perspectives. So in doing that, one thing that I've done, particularly with my female students, is just to make sure that I know that they feel included. are they comfortable with also sharing their perspectives, and how can I continue to make everyone that I've invited to the program feel supported? And so for me, one way to do that is to include what I would call culturally mindful instructional practices. And so that's me being very mindful of the types of projects that we're working on. And I know that using, diversity of perspectives, it not only attracts, diverse groups of people, but it also attracts more outcomes. These outcomes can help to support a more diverse population. And when I say population, I'm now talking about society and the impact that it can have on society overall. So when you have diverse teams, you can have more of an impact on the different outcomes in terms of gender and in terms of cultural diversity. And it helps us to solve more challenging problems as a team. So for me, I believe that this has been a very competitive differentiator with my program. It has helped us increase our innovation and enhance our creativity. So the next key takeaway is to leverage intelligence. And so I believe that intelligence does come in many forms. And for me, I think that one of the ways that you can, get ahead, have an edge, so to speak, is to leverage as much of the various forms of intelligence as possible. So for example, for me, I think that winning is an emergent property where the path to the win is not linear. It's not a straight line. It involves a complexity of different factors. So in particular, I believe that when you're working with harnessing data to derive value, especially for team sports, what I've learned is that I need to approach this with this type of analysis with a complex systems lens. So that's why the idea of collective intelligence has proven to be very highly valuable. So for example, the different ways that I've been able to do that are just thinking about how to make decisions as a group and versus just from my own personal perspective. Also, how can I form a consensus among the group and then just use expertise from different disciplines instead of my own, especially within data science, because it's multidisciplinary. I've leveraged the collective intelligence by just doing those things. But additionally, not only, having this human type of intelligence, I've been able to pair that with what I consider insights from artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the use of different sports technologies. These are all components of collective intelligence that have worked very well for me. So for example, our premier sports analytics project involves the work of Shot Tracker, which is a sensor-based system that automatically collects and captures real-time statistical and performance basketball analytics. So I'm kind of sharing a screenshot here of an app, which is the Shot Tracker app, and it produces this graphic of an actual shot chart. And that, of course, is like a half-court view of the floor. This is a shot chart for our women's basketball team. And so with this data, our players and teams, of course, are able to just identify their strengths, improve their weaknesses in shooting from a variety of locations on the floor. So the idea of leveraging intelligence is not to replace human intuition or insight, but to enhance our expertise by finding ways to use computing collectively. So this leads me to the next takeaway, and that is to live on the emerging edge. For me, the emerging edge, as a computer science professor, has been an exciting place to live because I've been able to incorporate new emerging technologies throughout the process of creating a sports analytics program. And it's been very exciting for me because these technologies sometimes might have been otherwise out of reach for many of our students and coaches. So what I've learned that not only can we and should we embrace collective intelligence, but it also goes hand in hand with things like the Internet of Things, literally, and the use of wearable technologies, because now we were coupling these types of things and technologies and advances in 5G or fifth generation communication networks. they really have a lot of potential for the future in unlocking even more benefits. And if you're looking to transform society like our lab, it helps us to think about what to do and how to grow into the future. Because we're using more of these types of technologies, and again, trying to leverage the collective intelligence of these tools, there's been more pressure on our network capacity. And of course, there's a growing demand for speed, sport to be faster and faster in response to some of the AI and related applications. So what I found is we need to find value in collaborating with our campus IT services. We also have industry partners, and constantly collaborate and explore different ways of how to enhance our technology infrastructure. So this should be an ongoing process and an ongoing mindset. So for example, I have an example here of edge computing, and basically that is a term that's used to describe intelligent computational resources, for example, like AI, where they're located close to the source of the data consumption or where the data is generated. And one of the things that edge computing does is it improves the time that it takes for the data to be transferred, which is known as latency. But it improves that time it improves the time that it takes for that data to be transferred between its original source. And the thing about edge computing is that today only 10% of data is processed at the edge, but it's projected to grow to 75% by the year 2025. So my approach is to kind of live on the emerging edge, but also think about it from the perspective of emerging technologies and allowing your programs and ideas to grow. And finally, my last takeaway is promoting athletic excellence. So for me, I think that it's really important to embody, all these intelligent approaches, of course, within yourself and within your team. But I think it's also important to become an advocate and a promoter of this concept of athletic excellence. So for me, the bigger picture is we're using sports analytics to enhance data science educational opportunities to a wider audience. And that audience, for me, is also student athletes and coaches. Because student athletes exposure to more data, that also increases their data literacy skills as well. So one of the things I like to do is take the time to connect with as many athletes as possible and also teach them, how to use data to work on their efficiencies analytically and iteratively, over and over again, repetitively, while also becoming stronger by understanding their weaknesses. Because I believe that once someone can actually use data and effectively outline some of the places where there are areas of improvements and they can actually see it in the data, then it helps them to become stronger, because at that point they have a better understanding of where they're weak. So for me, I feel like I am a data advocate within the sports world, in the sports analytics arena on my campus. I'm a data advocate in that way. But at the same time, I feel like I should also, and I've learned to be careful not to display what I consider an expert bias. And what that means is I want to make sure that I'm also learning how to communicate data more effectively and efficiently. And I'm teaching others. And in this way, this is why I believe that having a mastery of storytelling with data is important, because storytelling is not really about your understanding, but it's about conveying the story to the end user. And so I want to make sure that the students and coaches and also the student athletes are able to draw very, very clear connections between what they're doing in practice and how that impacts their performance outcomes or game outcomes. So lastly, what I like to do is just promote this attitude of athletic excellence, so that these athletes can become, and other stakeholders like coaches, can consider these improvements on their own game, within their own paradigms, so that they can make these improvements regardless of what the opponent's record or the opponent's ranking is. So it gives them a lot more control of how to make these adjustments for themselves. So it has been a pleasure sharing all these key takeaways on how I've used data to transform higher education. Please feel free to reach out. I have my information listed on this slide. I'm happy to answer any questions.